I finished my hot pocket, took my plate to the kitchen and was walking back to the living room when my father came through the front door. "Hey, Dad," I said. "I thought you were working a double shift." "I was," he replied, "but I came home to see if you were all right." "I'm okay. Why do you ask?" "Well, you see, son," my father said, sounding slightly annoyed. "Mr. Powell from down the street, he works the night shift where I work. And he came up to me about an hour ago and said that he was driving down Dead Man's Lane earlier this afternoon. He said he saw you standing in the middle of the field, holding your guitar and bouncing around like those guys in those videos you watch. And also that there was a red Mustang parked sideways, almost blocking the road." "My son doesn't drive a Mustang," I told him. "He does now," he said. "So I came home to talk to you about it." I stood there in shock. He saw what? I thought. "It wasn't me, Dad. I've been home all day. And besides, a lot of people have cars like that. I've seen them," I said, trying to cover my ass. "Don't BS me, son," my father said, in his best dad voice. "I pulled into the driveway and that exact kind of car is parked out there. I know you're 18 now, but you still live under my roof. What is going on?" He had a slight aggressive tone in his voice now. Then he looked at me, eye to eye, showing concern more than anger. And I hated lying to him again. "I'm fine, Dad, really. It's just been a rough couple of days. But that really wasn't me out in that field." "Okay, son," my father said suspiciously. "I'll believe you for now." Then he gave me that "I know you're lying, but I'm not going to let you know that I know you're lying" look, and I smiled. "By the way, when did you get a new car?" he asked. "Couple days ago," I replied nervously. "Excuse me," I said, walking past him and going out to my car to get my guitar and amp, which I just remembered I'd left out there. "Don't forget to check the fluids," my father said from the doorway. "Nice car like that, you don't want to mess it up." "I won't, Dad," I replied, going around the front of my car and getting my things. I came back inside and he was gone, and I heard my parents' bedroom door being shut, so I went upstairs to my room. I heard my mum come home soon after. I put my guitar and amp in the corner by the closet, shut my door, then leaned back against it and sighed the biggest sigh of relief imaginable. If he finds out I lied to him, he's going to kill me, I thought to myself. Suddenly my ears picked up the mentally disturbing sounds of my parents doing things that kids never want to hear their parents do. You know what I mean. My bedroom is right above theirs, and this house is not very well insulated. "Oh my God," I said to myself. "Not again. Those two are like rabbits." I immediately put WASP's The Last Command cassette in my boombox, pressed play and turned it up to try and drown out the noises, and because that album always helps me think, even to this day. I sat on my bed letting the music engulf me as I began to think about what my father had told me. Now let me get this straight through my eyes, I thought. I was in that church with those guys auditioning for a spot in the band. But through Mr. Powell's eyes, and most likely everyone else's, I was in the field that was there before the dark, foggy forest engulfed it, and I guess I was the only one that could see the forest and church. But why? I wasn't dreaming, and I wasn't hallucinating. I slammed my damn forehead on the freaking steering wheel, for God's sake. That should have snapped me out of it, right? Am I going crazy? No, I'm not crazy. I have the papers that Ricky gave me. I reached into my top desk drawer and pulled them out. There, right here, in my hand. I'm holding them right now. Yep, a song list and an address. How is that even possible if it didn't really happen? I said out loud. I lay down on the bed holding the papers tight to my chest and fell asleep. And luckily a plane flew over our house about 5:30 the next morning. That sucker must have been really low, as it shook the whole house and woke me up, just in time to get ready for school. I figured I would go today since I hadn't gone yesterday. I'd fallen asleep the night before without setting my alarm clock, then heard the roaring of the plane's engines fading away in the distance. I stumbled out of bed, putting the papers back in the desk, and went downstairs for my morning dose of caffeine. I had my coffee, took a shower, the number on my arm now reading 2555. Do I really have to keep telling you what number is on my arm? I mean, you get the idea, right? It was about 6:15, and school started at 7, so I got dressed into my metal gear, of course, grabbed my wallet and keys and my book bag, then headed for the door. Mum and Dad weren't even up yet, so I hopped in my car and made my way to school. I only had a few days left, as I was graduating the next week, and now I think it's time that I tell you a little bit about myself. As you already know, I was a full-blown metalhead, to the core, and when you think of 80s metalheads, you probably think of a young James Hetfield, or maybe even Tommy Lee. Long hair, semi-attractive, and a cool kind of guy, right? Well, let me tell you, that could not be further from the truth in my case. I may have been metal on the inside, but on the outside I was, and for the most part still am, a nerd, a geek, a spaz, or whatever you want to call it. That was me. I was skinny, unattractive, with bushy brown hair, and I looked like a cheerhead. I tried growing it long once, but it ended up growing out, and I looked like a cross between Don King, Jimi Hendrix, and Bob Ross. It was bad. Really bad. Plus, to top it all off, I wore these thick black military-issued birth control glasses that screamed nerd from the get-go. I was quiet, shy, and socially awkward, and didn't really like people, and still don't. I didn't really have any friends, still don't, and I mostly hung out at home, listening to music, talking to my mum, writing songs and drinking coffee. I was never a party goer, and I didn't do drugs or drink alcohol. But you have to remember, 1986 was long before the days of being a nerd was cool. Back then, being bullied was just a part of growing up. If you were just the slightest bit different, if you had a brain, if your parents weren't of a certain financial status, if you didn't meet the criteria set forth by the beautiful people, then you might as well paint a target on your ass. Because someone, if not everyone, was going to mess with you. A lot. Now every nerd or geek or whatever, male or female, had that one asshole that always messed with them constantly. For me, it was Tommy Thompson. I'd been dealing with that asshole since grade school, although not anymore, and I can't say that I'm sorry for what happened, because I'm not. I parked the car, got out, grabbed my book bag out to the back seat, and headed into school, walking through the doors and into the student smoking lounge. And yes, back then the students could smoke in designated areas at certain times, at least at my school anyway. So I was walking along, when out of the blue, Tommy came up from behind me, grabbed my book bag off my shoulder, and began taunting me with it. Tommy was a big kid, about 6'2", incredibly fat, loud, obnoxious, and an all-round asshole to everyone, even his own friends, and he always smelled like rotten eggs and sweat. "You want it back? Here, take it." He held it out to me, and when I went to grab it, he pulled it back. Everyone was pointing and giggling at that point. "Not fast enough, loser," he said. He then laughed, nodding his head and smiling, as he turned to look at the crowd. Then without thinking, I yelled out, "You know what I want? I want you dead." Suddenly, he dropped the bag, grabbed his chest, stumbled back and began gasping for air, then fell face first, hitting the ground with a loud plop. Everyone stepped back and stopped pointing and laughing at that point, and a couple of girls screamed. He was dead, and I killed him. I grabbed my bag, ran out of the school, jumped in my car and tore out of there like a bat out of hell, and never went back. I didn't even go for graduation. My parents were really upset about that, but I did get my diploma in the mail a few days later. I drove around for a while trying to comprehend what I had just done. I had just killed someone, simply by saying I wanted them dead, and I actually felt no remorse at all. I wasn't even sorry. Yeah, no one's gonna mess with me again. Hey, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed my video, And if you did, could you please give me virtual hugs by subscribing and clicking that notifications button? I also have a Patreon page and YouTube channel membership if you'd like to support me further. Thank you again for being here. Keep being creepy.